Now I've just spent the entire segment on this. What have I done? That's coming up in the second hour. And I'm going to spend more and more time on this, more and more guests on this. But I like to get people on who I know are accurate, and I know this guy's accurate because I basically know everything he knows. He just is on it and more articulate because this is all he does. And he can give you the sources so you can prove to yourself right now we're telling you the truth. And it's a holocaust. There's no doubt. This is affecting us all. That's why if you study the Rockefellers and Rothschilds and the elites, they all have their own private farms in many cases. They have their own food organically delivered to them. They only go to special organic restaurants that are certified. They're always drinking reverse osmosis or specially filtered water. They know. They know. And most of us can't even afford to fully be off of what they're doing. And now when we try to force it into market by buying it, the feds come in and sue people and won't even let them properly certify they don't have hormones in them. Or that they don't have GMO. Or they say, oh no, we're going to start certifying GMO as healthy and saying it's not GMO. And that's why allergies are exploding. That's why all of this is happening. It's why your kids have got pimples all over their faces. That's the body trying to kick all this out. Kids didn't have pimples 50 years ago, 100 years ago. Why now? Because we're being poisoned and it's only getting worse. We are fighting back. Good things are happening. But first I want to give you the bad news, and then I want to give you the good news about GMO. Now, I've heard him on the radio. I've read some of his writings. I've ordered his book. But if it's anything like his info, it's all accurate because I study this all the time. But then I get up here and it's so much info, it's hard to spend my time articulating it. We've had Nobel Prize winners, top scientists on. That's where I learned everything that I heard Jeffrey Smith talking about. I can just tell you this guy's accurate. He just doesn't have my knowledge. He goes well past that. So I want to make him a regular part of this show. This is a short segment. We're about to break. But Jeffrey, in the time we've got before the break, tell us a little bit about yourself, your mission, your films, your books, what you're doing.
Great. I'm the executive director of the Institute for Responsible Technology, and I've written the books Seeds of Deception and Genetic Roulette. We're leading campaigns that we believe can end the genetic engineering of the food supply by informing consumers about the health dangers associated with genetically engineered foods and giving them non-GMO shopping guides so they can make healthier, non-GM choices.
And you've got a couple different websites. Tell us about those.
Well, seedsofdeception.com is one of our websites that has products, downloads, free newsletter. And our Institute for Responsible Technology is at responsibletechnology.org. And they link to each other, so if you just remember one, you'll get to the other. And you can sign up for a monthly e-newsletter, listen to an hour-long talk, watch a sample video. We have the most recent book that I've written is called Genetic Roulette, and I worked with more than 30 scientists over 2 years to document all of the known health risks of genetically engineered foods.
Well, see, I'm an addict of reading, all the scientific papers and even peer-reviewed studies, not just the news articles about them, and listening to you on radio and reading your writings. It's like, oh, I remember that, I remember that, I remember that, and I was shocked at all the stuff I'd forgotten, the incredible admissions they've made, and that as bad as I thought it was even more crazy, because you kind of put it all into picture.
When you put it all together and you read it together, you read thousands of sick, sterile, and dead livestock, thousands of toxic and allergic reactions, damage to virtually every organ and every system studied in laboratory animals. And then there's all sorts of assumptions that they used as the basis for safety claims, which turned out to be false. So taken together, we have irrefutable, overwhelming evidence of harm associated with these genetically modified foods.
Well, we're going to break, and we're going to come back. Got a long segment coming up. I want you to give us the basic history of it and then go right through how, when they change one gene randomly, and I've had Nobel Prize winners on about this subject who invented this, it randomly changes thousands of others each time there's a new generation of the plant, new amino acids, killing half the mice that were fed it, knowing it's doing it, putting it on the market, genetically engineered pesticides into the food, all the numbers of the milk, the girls at 3 going into puberty. I mean, this is a holocaust. We cannot, I think with words, sir, describe just how bad it is.
Well, it is pretty remarkable what a catastrophe our food supply is, and the biggest, most radical change in history is the genetic engineering of the food supply, which came under the radar in 1996 big time.
I agree, and I've interviewed so many experts from so many different fields, and from all of my 13 years of interviewing people on a host of subjects, they believe that genetic engineering is the potentially most dangerous thing we face, more dangerous than thermonuclear weapons. We'll be right back, and there's no controls, folks. It's all open air. It's out there. You're eating it. It's unbelievable. We'll talk to this amazing guest on the other side.
He's the T-Rex of political talk. Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network.
Okay, he interviewed scores of scientists for just one of his books alone. I'm telling you, the info he's going to give you is documented. We're very honored to have Jeffrey Smith with us from Institute for Responsible Technology, your consumer safety partner. There is a revolution brewing. When you hear the bad news, remember the good news in the second half of the hour is coming up. Sir, you've got the floor. Lay out what we're facing.
Okay, the FDA should have been pretty heads up about this in the 1980s when a genetically engineered food supplement called L-tryptophan ended up killing about 100 Americans and causing 5,000 to 10,000 to fall sick. Many are still permanently disabled. Only the brand that was genetically engineered to produce this food supplement had these deadly contaminants that caused this epidemic. The only reason the scientists were able to discover it was because the disease was rare, acute, and came on quickly. If all three characteristics had not been in place, that same deadly L-tryptophan might still be on the market. Which begs the question, what about the genetically engineered crops that are on the market? Might they be producing the doubling of food-related illnesses in the United States, or the asthma and allergies, etc.? We don't know because there's no post-marketing surveillance, no human clinical trial. In fact, the FDA had urged their superiors, the scientists, we know this from documents made public from a lawsuit, their scientists had urged their superiors to require long-term safety studies because they said genetically engineered foods could create allergies, toxins, new diseases, and nutritional problems. But the White House had instructed the FDA to promote the biotechnology industry in 1992, and the person in charge of policy at the FDA was the former attorney of biotech giant Monsanto and later Monsanto's vice president. So the policy ignored the scientists, it ignored the science, and allowed the foods on the market with absolutely no safety tests required. The FDA only has a voluntary consultation process in which the companies basically give summary data and don't actually give raw feeding study data or anything that they can actually evaluate safety. Only one company gave raw feeding study data. It was for a genetically engineered tomato. It turns out that when it was force-fed the tomatoes, because the rats actually refused to eat it, 7 of 40 died within 2 weeks. Another 7 of 20 had stomach lesions. In the UK, they wanted to do long-term safety studies to prove to consumers that GM foods were safe, so they gave a $3 million grant to Dr. Arpad Pustai, one of the world's leading scientists in his field. He fed supposedly harmless genetically engineered potatoes to rats. It caused potentially precancerous cell growth in the digestive tract, smaller brains, livers, and testicles, partial atrophy of the liver, damaged immune system. And this was because of the process of genetic engineering itself, not the particular change that they made for the potato. He went public with his concerns, was a hero for about 2 days at his prestigious institute, and then 2 phone calls were allegedly placed from the UK Prime Minister's office, forwarded through the receptionist to the director of the institute. The next morning, Dr. Pustai was fired from his job after 35 years and silenced with threats of a lawsuit. His 20-member research team was dismantled, and they never implemented the long-term safety testing protocol.
But now he's been vindicated. We've interviewed him several times. Now the studies have come out, and it was right. And he said half the rats that were fed the potato died. I'm going from memory there.
Well, in his case, in his particular study, there were no deaths, but there was another study that was done recently on rats, and these were fed genetically engineered soybeans.
That was the one.
Russian National Academy of Sciences. And they fed it to female adult rats, and it turns out more than half of the offspring died within the first 3 weeks. So the rats themselves that ate it didn't die, but the offspring died. Also, the offspring were on average much smaller, and they couldn't reproduce when they tried to mate them together. This woman who I was in a conference call with yesterday with the Ukraine, with a biosafety presentation, she describes how she did this study 3 times in a row with similar results, and then, for some reason, The rat food that was being bought by the Institute and to all of the rats turned out to switch to genetically engineered soy-based rat food. So she couldn't do any more studies, but after 2 months of feeding all of the rats in the facility genetically engineered soy-based rat food, she asked her colleagues, what's the infant mortality? It had shot up to over 55%.